Loud.
Good afternoon, everybody. I hope you're all well. We are just trying to get people to connect, so bear with us for a minute or two. Welcome. We shall wait a minute or two just to kind of see how many we've got and who we can get on board. While we wait, feel free to use your chat box, say hello, and wave on the screen, check your technology, make sure that you can hear me okay. Make sure, I guess, you can see me okay, and more importantly, that you can see some slides. You should be able to see a Lighthouse Group slide with positive thinking. We're going positive on a Friday afternoon. Perfect time to go positive. Weekend coming. I don't need to do anything or say anything, really. The job is done. As soon as I finish talking, your weekend starts, I would guess. For some, maybe not all. In fact, what are you doing here? Haven't you got better things to be doing on a Friday afternoon?
I think that's talking yourself out of a job, David.
Yeah. So just say, I wait a minute or two. Let's give another 60 seconds or two for people to join on board. There's people coming in as we speak. But it's nice to go on, Helen.
It's nearly beer o'clock, not quite, Simon.
Oh, we've got a beer o'clock person already, have we? I think a lot of people say beer o'clock starts at about midday these days, especially if you're homeschooling as well. So again, people coming through. People's time management is atrocious. We're going to start talking in a minute or two. So, but let's see how many we can get. But I hope you all had a good Christmas. Hope Happy New Year. I guess the official time is this weekend to cut that one off. Is it 10 days of it or so, a week of it. As for next week, well, Happy New Year's are out in my book, so we can say Happy New Year. Hopefully, it has been so far. Tough one, maybe. Full of surprises. But I'm sure we're all still thinking positively. So let's make a start. I'm looking at the screen, and there's still lots of people kind of joining in, but I think we only have an hour or so. So let's push on. Welcome everybody, and great that you can join us on a Friday afternoon for the last, I think, the fourth of our current series of little webinars on life and the meaning of life and the universe and everything. Anything that may be of vague interest to people, they try and get me to talk about. So here we are, positive thinking. My name is David, for those that don't know, haven't met me before. I am a trainer with the Lighthouse Group. And my background is in business psychology, kind of social psychology with a business angle. I'm also a positive psychologist, so studied positive psychology for the past 10 years or so. So I've got a little bit of an idea of kind of where we're going with this. Not a lot. Like to kind of make things up as I go along to a certain degree, kind of keep it off the cuff. So to that end, if anyone does have any questions, anything burning that they would really like to know in the next hour or so, then put it in your chat box or wait till the end. Hopefully I will leave time, kind of aiming for 45, 50 minutes, but then I kind of always do and kind of always overrun. So stick the question in there. Particularly in the chat box, because if I can't answer it, then someone else may well be able to. I'm sure we have some eminently qualified people in this subject. You don't need a formal qualification in this stuff. Is life experience is pretty useful too. So if you do have a question or just want to throw something out to the group, then feel free to put it in the chat box, and I'll try and do my best to do something with it. But also, feel free to have a conversation kind of going on alongside my conversation. So let's kind of talk positive thinking, and I guess we probably need to start with some kind of definition of positive thinking. it is probably worth saying, having kind of made that introduction, is I'm not really sure, and if, why I was kind of asked to do this, because I'm not a great believer in it, dare I say. I put my hands up. I'm not a huge fan. Ask me about positive thinking, and I kind of get a bit grumpy on it. And I'll kind of explain why in a minute or two as to kind of where I come from slightly on this one. So good, thanks, Jane, to agree. So feel free to agree with me. Feel free to disagree with me. By the way, if you're an absolute believer in positive thinking, then I'm not going to argue with that. Great. I just guess we need to kind of work out what it is. So here's one definition: a mental and emotional kind of attitude that focuses on the bright side of life and expects positive results. And I guess that's where I have the problem. In that last little bit, the expectation of positive results, the belief that think positive and everything will be okay. And it's the kind of stuff, I guess, you know, the best example of this, you may have come across it, a multi-billion-dollar, I think, industry come out from a book called The Secret. And a whole kind of industry based around the Secret. Rhonda Byrne, I think the lady's name is. And for me, and I hate to say this if there are people here who are absolute believers in The Secret, but for me, this is kind of what's not great about this whole positive thinking industry, because it has become a bit of an industry. So The Secret, and I can tell you The Secret, it's not rocket science really. It's based on the law of attraction. It's based on kind of books that have been written for years and years over the years, with this kind of idea that if you just focus on good stuff will come to you. But I guess what's really irritating, dare I say, about this book and this whole concept is what's talked about is this kind of idea and what she talks about is you're sending out radio waves of positivity, and that kind of goes out, and it's like a magnetic field, and it will all come back to you. But you have to truly believe. You have to just always think positive and be absolutely 100% focused in what you're going to get and devote all your energy to it, and it will come to you, whether that's wealth, whether that's happiness, whatever that will be. I just think that's a little bit dangerous. I just think that sets us up for a fall. So I have no problem. I have no problem with the law of attraction. By the way, the law of attraction is a psychological law that's been around for a long time. It's this kind of idea that you're kind of sending out these waves, and these waves are automatically going to come back to you. And it's that blind faith and following that I have a little bit of a problem with. I haven't got time to go into any great depth, and I don't want to kind of diss it too much, because the law of attraction and various other psychological laws that sit alongside that have a lot of bearing. So I've got no problem in believing in stuff. I've got no trouble, particularly in kind of having purpose and moving towards stuff. It's that blind faith, and particularly then if that doesn't come to fruition, that it's somehow your fault because you haven't believed strongly enough. That's the kind of bit, and we get sort of very down on ourselves then when we believe that it's our fault because we don't get what we deserve. So I've just got a bit of a kind of health warning against sometimes this kind of blind positive thinking is just kind of say your affirmations once a day and everything is going to be okay. But having said that, let's try and kind of look a bit more positively on positive thinking. Let's not get too negative on positive thinking. It's not all bad, surely. So here's kind of a broader, bigger look at it. So positive thinking. Don't stop reading the book by Emily. You make your own mind up and go and have a look at that. Is positive thinking approaching life's challenges with a positive outlook and perhaps a can-do attitude. So for me, it's not necessarily about avoiding or ignoring the bad things. It's about making the best of potentially bad situations. Trying to see the best in other people and viewing yourself and your abilities in a positive light. So it's not to kind of go, nothing can be bad. there is rubbish out there, I don't need me to tell you that, and there's nothing wrong with thinking negatively and feeling not great about stuff. It's kind of what you do with it. There is stuff that is out of our control, and there's stuff that we don't particularly want and we don't particularly like. That's okay. It's what we do with that kind of stuff. It's the internal bit. It's how we interpret it. I think is what's important. And those are the kind of thoughts I want to kind of take through in this next little bit. So here's just some thoughts you might want to do, and I quite often do this, something along these lines, is this kind of do your kind of self-inventory, if you like, on a kind of scale of 1 to 5. 1 being I don't show this mindset ever, or I haven't in the past however many months, to 5 being I live that and every single day. So there are kind of 6 examples of a positive mindset here, and maybe worth just having a kind of little look at those. So optimism, this kind of belief, I guess, that this hopefulness, this kind of confidence that everything will kind of turn out right and that your efforts haven't been in vain. So kind of how optimistic do you see yourself being, particularly at this present time? How have you demonstrated optimism? But also then acceptance of the way things are, that things don't always turn out the way you want them to. But that's okay. So how often do you find yourself kind of railing against stuff, or do you find yourself kind of going, okay, there isn't anything I can do about that. I can kind of live with that. Doesn't mean you like it necessarily, but you can accept it is for what it is. Gratitude, being thankful for what you do have, for what is going kind of right, the good things in your life. How often have you shown gratitude? Number 4, mindfulness. So we talked mindfulness not so very long ago. I guess that's about kind of living in the moment, isn't it? And also your ability to focus in perhaps on what is important, but particularly on the kind of the now. Integrity. So integrity, how do we define integrity? This is kind of that whole idea of doing the right thing, of kind of being honorable, I guess, kind of straightforward rather than kind of deceitful. So I'm hoping that you're all starting to score sort of 4s and 5s up in this one, kind of honest and open with yourself and with others. And I think that's really important, being able to kind of have a positive mindset. And the other one that's often put in there is this kind of idea of challenge. And this is the interesting one. This is kind of where I come from. I think one of the favorites, and we'll kind of expand on this a little bit further on down the line, which is this kind of willingness to embrace difficulty, to take risk, to learn from risk, to kind of have the belief that that's how you learn and grow, by having challenge. So kind of bad stuff is good. Where do we learn from this? How do we embrace it? How do we kind of, that's how we move forward and grow, is by having the crappy stuff and kind of doing something with it, and not hiding away from the challenge. So you can, and those are 6 of many, there's lots of different kind of ways we can begin to kind of define the kind of characteristics and traits on those that have a positive mindset. But these are a reasonably good kind of 6 to be starting with, kind of broad areas. And the question is, how often do you demonstrate those? So again, one of the things I'm always talking about is many of us kind of know this stuff. It's whether we're doing it, on a kind of day-to-day basis. It's great knowing, but what are you doing? And that's where often we fall flat. This conversation I have all the time with managers, etc. When I'm talking to the Lighthouse leadership management programs, things like time management is our ability to kind of prioritize and not work too late, etc., etc. And everyone knows it, still not doing it. In fact, they're worse than ever at doing it. Is now they're working from home and remotely. They've saved all this wonderful time in not traveling, and they're just stuffing it full of work and beyond. And yet every time, yeah, I know, but they don't do, and they wonder why they get to the end of the year and they're on their knees struggling. Anyway, that's a different subject altogether. I'm feeling like I'm kind of being negative here rather than positive. Oh, sorry, I told you I have a grumpy head on. But anyway, I need to learn some of this stuff. That's myself. So here's some the traits are worth having a little look at. It is also worth just putting a slide up, I think, in terms of kind of there's a lot of research around positive thinking. And let me just kind of put the whole thing up there. But it is fair to say that lots of the research will say that those who kind of look on the bright side of life, as a group of people said a while back, things like, you know, physical benefits of longer lifespans, lower chance of having heart attacks and better physical health in general, kind of resistance to common colds, low blood pressure, all of these are separate kind of studies that, you know, look at the benefits of kind of looking positively at life. Better pain tolerance. Well, I can put up with that one. I do a lot of, as many of you know, long distance endurance triathlon stuff. It's kind of why I like the challenge side of things. But also this kind of positive thinking that I'll get to the end is good for the pain tolerance. But also mental benefits, creativity, problem solving, clearer thinking, better moods, coping skills, kind of less depression, obviously, comes into the mix. So, you know, these may be obvious, but there is, you know, a lot of, you know, and more kind of research into these in much more depth that kind of tell us what we kind of already knew, that thinking positively is good for us. And this is kind of cycle that by thinking positive, we feel better, and by feeling better, we start to do things better. And I mean some of the basic things like eating properly, like sleeping properly, like exercising properly, you know, and that becomes this kind of self-fulfilling prophecy, this cycle, that if we're kind of eating properly, sleeping properly, exercising properly, we're kind of better able to think more positively. And it's that ongoing cycle that's so important. So, does anyone recognize that? Or is that a silly thing to say? It's a yellow hat. Anyone know kind of why I'm talking the yellow hat? I'm just going to say, yes, thank you, Wendy. Good old De Bono thinking hats. Well done, people. We're going back into kind of the history books for Edward De Bono's. I like it, Barbara. I like your thinking. To De Bono's 6 thinking hats, and the yellow hat, often known as the positive hat. And I guess just a kind of question at this stage of the game. Can you think happy all the time? So, you know, a lot of thinking is, you know, we need to think positively. Well, you know, is that the kind of thing we can be doing, and should we be doing? Do you think that's a kind of good philosophy to have? Is always be positive? And I'm not saying that with Laura's giving me a big no. I'd be interested just in your thoughts. You know, can you and should you try and be happy? Okay, so good. So you put your thoughts in that, folks, and you know, have a little discussion going on in the background. And you know, don't all feel that you know, if you feel yes, then very happy, very happy to. There's a good question. Positive is different to happy. Yes, it is different, without spending too much time kind of going through that. So good, keep those going, folks. And you can have a read of those and kind of answer and keep going with your kind of thoughts just on whether you can and perhaps should be happy stroke positive all the time. And maybe positive is a better way of putting it rather than happy. Let's keep to the word positive without kind of drawing too many distinctions between the two. So Edward De Bono, you know, the 6 thinking hats, and I guess, you know, the key thing for me around those kind of 6 thinking hats is balanced thinking. Is that, you know, positive thinking is important. It's one of the 6. We need, it has its place, of course, but it also has its, you know, there are also other types of thinking. If anyone want to kind of throw the other 5 up there for me. So let's go, if we're going to go yellow, let's go black. Let's do one at a time. So just stick a word in, folks, and help me out on this one. So the black hat, let's see how good you are. what is the black hat denotes? We've got a yellow one. We also have a black one. I've got the animations coming out. I don't know what kind of order they're. Thank you, Paul. Yes. Negative. We'll come back to that in a minute or two. So let's just kind of get some of these out there. We've got a red hat. Give me the red hat. No, it's not danger. Yeah, feelings. Thank you, Phoebe. Yeah, thanks, Sophie. Instinct, gut feeling, emotion. So the red hat is the kind of emotional hat, feeling. What about the white hat? The Red Hat Society. I don't know the Red Hat Society. Yeah, Red Hat, information, objectivity, analytical hat, the white hat. So the white hat is the home of analytics, of objectivity, of thoughts, of kind of information. The red hat, emotion. The black hat, negativity. We'll come back to that one. The yellow hat, positivity. The green hat, last two. Yeah, creativity. Probably the least used hat of all so many. So the green hat is ideas, innovation, creativity. And finally, the blue hat. The blue hat kind of in control of the thinking process. I kind of see it as the action hat, the hat that says, okay, we've thought through these other, all the other kind of hats. Now, what are we going to do? The move from creativity to innovation, thinking about stuff to doing stuff. So yeah, it's that kind of process control bit. So we have these 6 different hats. Rounded thinking, and I think that's what's really important. And I think when we start talking about positive thinking, it needs to be in its place. It needs to be part of greater thinking. And I think this is a really nice model just to kind of balance the thinking process up. So absolutely, if we find that we're not spending much time in that yellow hat and too much time in the black or the red, for example, then by all means, then start thinking, what do I need to do? How do I kind of focus in on that yellow one? But that yellow one is no more important than all the others. And I think what we're often trying to get to with positive thinking is this word kind of happiness and contentment. And I think that's what we're kind of moving towards. It's more rounded thinking rather than just positive thinking that's going to get us there. Red hat's not bad, Christine. Okay, so the black hat is our kind of negative hat, but that's given it a slightly bad rap. And I'll come on to the black hat and say in a second or two. Because if you align the black hat with the kind of white hat a little bit, then it's just kind of risk analysis. It's just looking at what can go wrong. And that's a very good, healthy, sensible thing to be doing. So there's nothing wrong with the kind of the black hat looking at potential downsides of things. We've got to be a little bit careful when the blacks align with the red, when we kind of get negative emotion. And that's the kind of the easiest way to kind of describe it. So this is where we get sort of difficulty, is when we feel or emotionally we are negative, and it's that kind of combination of black and red that's where is often where the kind of real negative and kind of anxiety, depression stuff kind of kicks into, when we're spending all our time thinking and feeling with a kind of black stroke red hat on. And it's that ability to kind of switch that black hat to more white, be more objective about it, and then to better kind of look at the other side of things. So balanced thinking, I think, is a really important thing, rather than just focusing on the positive stuff. But it is worth kind of just taking a little look a bit further at the kind of negative stuff that does go on, because often people will say that the black hat is our default hat. It's our most natural hat. The yellow hat we kind of have to work at, whereas the black hat is quite normal. So negative thinking, many will say is a normal place to be. And for anyone who's kind of spent any time with me before, will have seen this slide. I kind of throw it in pretty much every talk that we do. It comes from the chimp paradox, a book written, I don't know, 7 or 8 years ago, which essentially focuses on Emotional regulation, so our ability to control our emotions, our chimp, what's often known as our chimp, so the limbic system, home of our kind of emotional brain, if you like, and it's that side of us which is really powerful and really strong. The limbic system is kind of there essentially to help us survive. It's looking for danger. It's absolutely about survival. And so often, first impressions of anything, any situations, kind of run through the limbic system, and it's okay. What do I need to do to survive here? And that can be, quite negative in its interpretation. Particularly these days. Although we don't need the limbic system in the same kind of way, most difficult situations aren't life or death. The limbic system, the chimp, is still kind of kicking in and can cause all kinds of trouble. We start talking about things like cortisol that kind of starts getting injected, often known as the negative chemical that goes through our body. So there's lots going on that is kind of quite naturally negative. So we're having to fight kind of physiology and psychology to a certain degree. So one of the ways of kind of looking at kind of becoming more positive, I guess, is thinking about fixing the negative, is kind of recognizing perhaps kind of what's going on, or some of the things that we're thinking or doing, to see whether we can kind of work on that, is to recognize the kind of negative, recognize the difficult thoughts, rather than just kind of go, I shouldn't have them. I need to just think positive, is to go, actually, no, I need to kind of recognize what's going on negatively, and to see if I can fix. I think I've just got 4 kind of thoughts and ideas on this front. So once again, kind of having a little kind of think about any of these that kind of apply to you. So the kind of bad filter, how do we kind of look at that? This is kind of where you can be having, I don't know, the days that you could go out to a restaurant perhaps, and you go out to a restaurant with your friends, and you have a really nice meal and you have a really nice time, and at the end of the meal, maybe you got mischarged or something like that. Maybe you got charged a little bit too much money, or suddenly it was a bit more expensive than you thought, and that ruins the evening. And all of a sudden, all the good stuff just disappears, and that filter, that negative filter, you grabbed hold of one bit of kind of negative stuff, and that's kind of ruined the whole thing for you. So how often do you do that? How often do you kind of filter stuff through your negative lens? It goes through that black hat all the time, and you're just dismissing all the good stuff that's going on. So as well as a bad filter, how many of you kind of take the blame? So somebody, for example, you invite someone to the restaurant, and that person doesn't, just declines the offer to come to the restaurant with you, and then you blame yourself. What is it that you have done wrong? Why not? Why me? What is it? They don't like me? Is it something that I said? Is it something that I've done? And all of a sudden we kind of blame ourselves or criticize ourselves for someone else's actions, without following that through in any way, shape, or form. We just immediately assume it's because of us. How many of you are good at predicting disaster? So immediately, is something little happens in the morning, and then that's just your cue for the rest of the day. So we have this kind of expression, don't we? Get out the wrong side of the bed in the morning. So your car doesn't start, and that's it, right? Day's gone. Everything is going to be a nightmare today, and you just predict that everything is going to go horrendously wrong. And then, of course, perhaps it becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy. And then finally, black and white thinking. My wife's not in the room. I was just checking my wife's not in the room. My wife's very guilty of this black and white thinking. There's not a lot in the middle. It's good or it's bad, and there ain't a lot in between. It's this way or it's that way. And that's great when things are good, but then when they're not, they are bad. As I say, not an awful lot in between. So we've got to be really careful about this kind of black and white thinking. And many of us kind of, particularly in our busy lives, get stuck in just kind of black and white thinking, you know, because we have to make decisions quicker perhaps than ever before. So we're just kind of going black, white all the time. And that can be a dangerous kind of mindset to get into, and not taking time to kind of go through the greys perhaps, and take a closer look at stuff and kind of think through stuff, and use the 6 hats, for example, as your kind of model. What are the facts? What do I feel about the facts? What are the pros? What are the cons? What are the options? And then what am I going to do? And that's where this kind of 6 hat thinking model kind of is really important, rather than just kind of going straight into kind of black hat. And too much of these kind of, you know, both 1, 2, 3, and 4 of those will quite easily get stuck in a kind of black stroke red hat. So we're all guilty of them to a certain degree, and to a degree that's okay, not a big problem. But it's when we're doing it all the time, when it becomes a habit, when all of a sudden we're doing it without even thinking about it, we're just naturally kind of going black or white, or our filter is automatically negative, or we go into sort of self-criticism mode, etc., etc. And that becomes a fairly unhealthy place to be. So let's have a flip of the coin, and let's kind of focus on the positive thinking a little bit, if we can. And if we can, just try and throw some kind of thoughts and ideas your ways, in terms of what can we kind of do to become a little bit more positive about stuff. So I'm going to use the word happiness in here. Remember, kind of when I kind of talk about positivity, and I don't want to get too caught up in the definitions between it, but for me, kind of positive thinking leads us towards being happier, because positive thinking is kind of more enabling. It kind of gets us to where we want to go to. So the kind of idea of think more positively, then we'll tend to be happy, whatever happiness looks for. Positive psychology talks about a happiness formula. Anyone's seen this before? I'll give you the H, which is kind of happiness, equals S plus C plus V. Anyone got any thoughts and ideas on that one? The S, I'll give you a second or two, just to shove it up there. I'm going to keep an eye on time a little bit. Not so much self, excuse me, on that. So here's the bad news. I'm going bad news again, aren't I? S is your set range. So what we're talking about here, your set range is fortunately or unfortunately, round about, and don't hold me to this, about 50% of positive thinking is the clues in the right there, is in your genetics. You either is or you ain't. And some people are kind of nearer 60-70%, and some people are kind of 30-40%. But to a large degree, your set range is the kind of, let's call it just the 50%. So happiness is kind of the set range that you've got, that you were born with. Your C, what's your C? Well, C is your circumstances, your kind of current circumstances. Now, there's a whole lot of stuff, and we haven't got time to kind of go through the list. But you know, for example, you know, things like living in an affluent democratic society is good news. So you can get lots of good points for being that. Being married is another one, believe it or not. Having a social environment. All of these are good kind of points for your kind of current circumstances. So there's a kind of whole list of things that and again, I won't kind of define them. I can actually give you a list if you like. I'm happy to put a little PDF together of the list according to positive psychology. You can look it up as well on Google. Google happiness formula, and it will come up with your kind of circumstances, because they kind of published a few of the ones that are useful. The ones that kind of do make a difference, as well as some that don't. So things like making loads of money don't really make any difference. Even things like education don't make a huge amount of difference in terms of your kind of circumstances and happiness. The V, anyone know the V? No, not the vision. I like it though. This is the bit that's good for us. It's the variables. So it's the voluntary kind of, often known as the voluntary variables. So these are the bits that we can do something about. These are the things that we can start to apply sort of certain techniques, certain ideas, certain methods that will start to kind of raise that percentage up a little bit. So if we've got 50% that is our kind of our situation, and we've got another 20 or so percent, which are our circumstances or our set range and our circumstances, then what have we got left to play with? You know, maybe 30%, something like that, where we can start to kind of tip towards kind of happiness. And positive thinking kind of sits within this kind of bracket. So let me kind of throw some thoughts and ideas your way. You will know this kind of stuff, by the way. So again, it's about whether you do it. So unfortunately, I can't give you any kind of mystical magic that is going to kind of solve it all for you. But maybe it would just get you thinking a little bit about to what degree you do it and whether you should do it a little bit more. Yeah, sorry on that one. I know you were waiting for that. I know you were waiting for the answer. Well, maybe here it is. Let's try this first one. Smile. Oh, well, there's a surprise. Smiling, positive thinking and smiling. This is where I go horribly wrong, you see. Not my natural thing. Difference between these two here, anyone you kind of like more than the other? Are you being attracted to one more than another? Why having two pictures there? Both of a pretty girl, both smiling. Okay, Ace has gone for the kind of left-hand side. The first one, I presume the left one is a real smile. So one looks like genuine, and the others. So if I ask you all, I'm looking at those, you've got your cameras on. If I ask you all to smile now, what am I going to see? Am I going to see a genuine left-hand smile or a right-hand smile? So the left hand is kind of what we're looking for, yeah. So one is much more genuine than the other. Does anyone know what that's called, by the way? Anyone? It's known as the Duchenne smile. This kind of real smile. This smile that, and I can't give you the biological terms, but essentially that smile that kind of creases the cheeks and you know, gets the creases around the eyes, and we get this kind of genuine laughter. And in fact, I probably can here. What is it? The zygomaticus major muscle, which lifts the contours of the mouth. At the same time, the orbicularis oculi muscles lift the cheeks and crinkle eyes at the corners. That's our genuine smile. So that's where we kind of get the real happy chemicals starting to kind of be released, the more positive chemicals, rather than this kind of forced, kind of fairly unnatural smile that most of us spend most of our time trying to do. It doesn't really work. Actually, it probably actually has a more negative effect, probably releases more cortisol than it does anything else, kind of more of a negative chemical. So smiling more is an obvious one in terms of positive thinking, but actually it's quite a difficult one to do. You know, do you have fun? How do you go about, you know, kind of getting to a place where you have genuine humor, genuine laughter, genuine smiles going on? And I think, you know, for many of us, particularly in this kind of remote environment, many of us are kind of living and working in with lots of the stuff that's gone on over the past year or so. You know, this is a bit that really is missing, and yet really does make a big difference, because if we can start to smile more, then we will tend to kind of think more positively about things, you know, have a more positive view on life and the world, and particularly on others, because of the kind of chemical release that is going on. It is fair to say that just forcing a smile does take us in the right direction. So, you know, forcing a smile kind of gets us along the right route, but it really is no substitute for a genuine smile. So what's the advice? Go find ways of finding genuine smiles. So whether that's going to watch a you know, a comedy, you know, program or film, or whether that's spending time with people who make you laugh, whether that's reading a book that's funny, or kind of coming up with a whole load of jokes, whatever it is that tickles you, then start finding it. And I know that sounds obvious, but you know, I think it's a really difficult kind of thing sometimes to do. I have this kind of game that I play, which I play it with myself a lot. It's just kind of smile bingo. So when I'm kind of training, is I'll kind of look at the people and just kind of see how many are kind of genuinely smiling at various points, and then I make it a point. I'll fixate on someone. I'm looking at you, by the way, Simon. Now, Simon drew it, and you just happen to be in the middle of my screen. And then it's okay. How do I make this guy smile? Now, I won't do it now because I'm not going to sit there and start telling jokes. But I kind of, in my own little head, I go, okay, I haven't seen this person smile for a while. So then I start thinking, how do I get kind of people smiling? And it becomes a little kind of mission to get genuine smiles out of people. And it keeps me happy, if nothing else. So anyway, smile. It's a useful activity to have. So here's the biggie, of course. And to the degree where what I would like to do, Helen, you ready? Is I'm going to kind of throw something at you right now. I'm going to ask you to pop into, for 5 or 10 minutes, no more than 10 minutes, into a little breakout room. It's about time we did it in these webinars. It's how we normally work. It's how I normally work. You know, you're spending a lot of time in breakout rooms, kind of chatting through stuff. And these aren't really the format to do that. These are kind of very much kind of one-way shows. But I'd quite like to, for 5 or 10 minutes, just to do this, just go and play with it. So this concept of reframing, I love this picture, just because it says it all for me. But it's this simple concept that says, you know, we look at something negatively, is we have the ability to kind of choose to look at it in a very different way. We absolutely have choice. Often it's known as things like, you know, cognitive diffusion, the ability to act differently to our thoughts, or just be able to kind of separate kind of what we think and feel to what we actually do. And we can do the same just our thinking, in terms of just reframing stuff. There's a book I'm reading at the moment called The Wedge, which is a really interesting book, which is based on this kind of concept. So it's around kind of reframing, and it's around our ability to separate kind of physiology and psychology. But reframing situations is just look at things slightly differently. And there's a kind of 5-step model here that I use. You probably won't find this if you Google it, but there's others that work just as well. Which is, and this is what I'm going to ask you to do. I'm just want you to go and maybe share a negative thought. So something crappy that's happened to you today or this week, something that you're not looking forward to, something that you don't like, something vaguely negative. You can be as kind of honest and open as you like, or you can be as dumb as you like. You know, you can make something up, doesn't matter, for a bit of fun. And the idea is just to kind of then for the others to kind of go, okay, well, how would you reframe that? Or to reframe it for you is to kind of go, have you looked at it this way or that way? Is to kind of look on the bright side of it. Very simple exercise, but a really powerful one. The process is about, number one, awareness. What is it that is the negative situation? Secondly, then, is the kind of analysis. Let's look into it a bit more deeply. So often this is where we kind of ask questions of ourselves or of others. So we analyze it to get a bit more information and a bit more depth to it. Number 3, the bit I'd like you to do the work on, alternatives. So what are the options? How would we turn this on its kind of head? What is the positive side to it? It doesn't have to be a realistic slant on something, but you know,
I'm just going to see if I can get David back again.
Testing it. This is just going, okay, and is that, you know, is that work? useful? Helen, are you still there?
We're still here, but you stuttered for a bit. We lost you for a few minutes, so you might need to reiterate what you just said. David's obviously got caught up with some internet issues, so just give me a minute and I'll try and get him back on.
Guys, can you hear me? Hello, hello. Can you nod your heads? You can hear me again, can you?
Yeah, sorry, David. Yeah, we can.
Okay. I don't know what happened there. But you are back. Was it? I wonder whether it was the Zoom rooms.
I didn't start them.
Okay. Did it crash for everyone, or was it just me disappeared?
It just you when you were talking. You kept cutting out, and then you disappeared eventually.
Oh, okay. Oh, well, sorry about that, folks. Anyway, I'm back. I think Zoom rooms are going out the window for now, unfortunately. So apologies for that. I'm just trying to get a PowerPoint back on because I had to close it all down at the time. So let me just keep rambling on. Let me just check chat boxes, anything that goes on in that. We were there. Last I see is, shall we go to the pub? If there were any. Yeah, if only. What a great idea. Thank you on that one. Okay, let me just move on then, and let me just keep talking. But the exercise is valid and it's good, and I think it's well worth doing. So I don't know where you were before I kind of lost you. Is this kind of idea of reframing? I think is a fundamental one when it comes to kind of positive thinking. Is this awareness of where you're thinking kind of negatively, and then that kind of analysis of it a little bit, either with yourself or with others. And then it's that alternative. So this is a self-help exercise, or this is a kind of an exercise you can do with others. You know, it's used in things like cognitive behavioral therapy, CBT, etc. It's a well-known, well-used discipline. And it's just those idea of alternatives, and then going to number 4, which is whether they're acceptable or not, is actually whether they are kind of, things that people can go, yeah, actually I can grab hold of that, I can see that, I can understand it. As I said, my wife's example of car breaking down, not good in co-op, but actually the alternative was quite good. Get the shopping done, there was things that could be done for tonight, get it fixed, and that's, you can adopt them. You're not going to adopt them all, they're not going to be acceptable, and that's why kind of looking at a range of alternatives is really important, and not just grabbing hold of one. But the exercise of just flipping the coil, reframe, is such an important exercise to do. Difficult, but the more you do it, then the easier it becomes. Another thought on that one. Now, I know for some this is kind of tacky is not the right word. I know some people kind of don't like this kind of thing. So things like, gratitude journals, or positive kind of thinking journals. But there's no two ways about it. Writing down positive thoughts, or things that you're kind of grateful for, or things that are going well, is a really important exercise to do, because it really does kind of cements a few things down and gets you thinking and clarifying, and bringing into the conscious mind the kind of positive stuff. I don't know if any of you work in the NHS, and particularly I think in around nursing. But this is something that's kind of used, I think, quite a lot. So anyone in the chat box, tell me more about it, if it's something you're familiar with. And it doesn't have to be in nursing, but I know it's used in nursing. This kind of idea of 3 good things. So I think the way it's used in nursing is you towards the end of a shift is going around and asking kind of each nurse for 1 good thing that's kind of happened today. And then collating those and then picking out 3 of the good ones to then hand over to the next shift, to at least kind of help them start, with a degree of positivity. And I think, again, no more important time to be trying to hanging on to some of the little things that we should be grateful for, or that are going well, or that we can be positive about. And I think that's such an important habit to have, is to, it doesn't matter how crappy things are, is whether it's at the end of each day, or ideally, beginning, middle, and end of each day, is grabbing hold of the kind of the good things that are going on. They're so easily missed, and they may be small, but they're so important to have, and particularly if they're written down, is they're kind of cemented in place. And things you can come back to later on down the line, by the way, is reflect upon, is some of the good stuff that's happened this week or this month or last year, depending on the situation. So for you, and certainly something I'd recommend for others. My younger daughter's struggling with kind of school and all that kind of stuff, or lockdown, should I say, and just going through this exercise is just focusing on 3 little things a day that went well, has become a really powerful exercise. So 3 good things, and writing stuff down, journaling, is a really important activity. No great surprises here. Number 4, associating with positive people. So, I kind of like this idea, is you're the average of the 5 people you spend most time with. So the little exercise is to kind of write down the names of the 5 people you spend most time with. Now, that's probably quite an easy one. It's probably your family right now. But that's not always been the case, has it? Often we spend more time with people at work, or dare I say socially, than we do with our families. But whoever those 5 people are, yeah, exactly. Not if you're shielding. Is what do you get from them? What kind of influence are they on you? So you might not have so much choice these days. It's not quite that easy at the moment, and that's one of the problems. If we're kind of spending time with people who are struggling themselves, who are just can't see that any positives in kind of what's going on at the moment or the situation they're in, then that's, as we know, really draining. And it's really hard then to kind of stay positive and to help other people. But spend time with positive people, then you get those vibes. It's that simple. And so I think things like social media are really important tools. Of course, things like Zoom, is making contact and keeping in contact with kind of what we'll call positive influences, and all that is people who are more positive, people who are kind of more glass half full, people who have this kind of can-do view of stuff, not the kind of happy clappy secret kind of stuff, without trying to sound too whatever the word is, down on it, but those people who will look forward with a degree of positivity and hope and optimism, I think is really important. So have a little look at those people you are associating with and see if you can expand those horizons and find people, meet people online. Again, I know people that, I'm not talking about dating sites, by the way. I'm not recommending those. Don't go down that route. But I'm talking about kind of forums and kind of groups and that kind of stuff. Whether it's kind of interests and hobbies or just like-minded people to share stuff with, I think it is really positive. And there's plenty of places, by the way, you can go just to find people who are moving kind of in positive circles. So it's the company that you keep is really important and worth a little study, as I say, worth just having a reflection upon going, actually, do I spend time with people who are kind of positive? Number 5. Again, something kind of fairly close to my heart, something I kind of mentioned earlier on, and I've kind of alluded to several times already, as I say, turn failures into lessons or opportunities for growth. So this is a picture of my daughter, by the way, my younger daughter, who is a competitive sailor. And the reason she's up there is a year or two ago, she came back from her training, her squad training, pretty upset, and basically the long and short of it is because she felt like she was being constantly criticized, and everything coming her way was kind of negative, that her coaches were picking up on every little tiny thing that was going wrong, and kind of pulling her up on it, even though she was winning races and kind of sailing well, and it was just getting her kind of down. So we had the conversation, and that conversation essentially was about kind of, dare I say, learning to love your errors, learning to love your mistakes, is to see those as opportunities for growth. It is to go, fantastic, this isn't working well, but if I can get this bit working well, then think how much better this is going to be. And that little kind of mindset trick made a massive difference, because every time then she was picked up on something small, there was the challenge, and there was not great. Well, that means that if I can get that bit right, I can go even faster. I can get even better. And it's a brilliant attitude to have, but it's a really tough one to kind of get through. But it is that to go, okay, so things are going to get difficult, things are crappy, things aren't what I want, but therein lies the challenge and therein lies the growth. That's where I can get this bit right. If I can get over this, if I can get through that, then things are going to be that much better. And I've got to learn from the experience, and I'll be able to hold that forevermore. So there's really powerful stuff, and the stuff that we know, but many of us kind of hide away and shy away from the kind of negative stuff. Is we don't want it, so we kind of ignore it, or we try and put a positive, kind of just a positive head on, go, don't worry about that, let's just think positive, focus positive. Yes, but also embrace that black hat too, and turn it into something for growth. I'm conscious of time, folks. Now, a little kind of gap. There's just 2 more I want to finish off with, two more kind of small ones, before we kind of finish up and just make sure we've got any questions. So this one is something we know, and again, it's something we kind of dismiss a lot, but it's just things like changing your language. And it's just turning some of this kind of negative language into positive language, and just becoming much more aware of where you start to use negative language and some of the habits that you have to pick up. So this is just something I picked up, a little Google image on some kids' change of language. But I think what I'm just asking you to do is to kind of recognize in yourself or recognize it in others how often we just use the negative, and finding just ways to change that. And when that becomes kind of unconscious and subconscious, it makes a vast difference. The one that's always stuck with me, and the one I kind of like best, is this kind of idea of just using the word yet often. I don't know if you've come across that. But when people say, I can't do this, just add the yet in there somewhere down the line. I don't want to do this, but and I can't do it, but I can't do it yet. And that just changes things for me an awful lot. It might be difficult now, but it doesn't mean it's going to be difficult in the future. And again, it alludes to that kind of learning and growth. So just consciousness of yours and others around you, kind of negative verbal behaviors, and to look at whether you can begin to kind of shift those a little bit. And my last kind of thoughts really, this kind of concept, and again, I've kind of talked around this a fair amount, but it's about consciousness, awareness, and paying attention to and savoring those good moments. So grabbing hold of that kind of positive stuff, the 3 good things, if you like, but doing a bit more with it. And there's an awful lot of research about kind of, we talk, I don't know if anyone's done any things like neuro-linguistic programming, NLP, which was popular for a long time, and lots of other kind of concepts around it that talk about kind of using the senses. So that's why kind of writing things down is important. That's why kind of verbalizing things is important. But then it's also using other senses. So the positive things, things like food is kind of bringing the taste to mind, and smells to mind, and touch to mind. The more we begin to kind of bring all the senses into it, often known as just kind of savoring, is bringing all the senses to bear, then the more powerful it is. So what we're trying to do is magnify the good experiences, magnify the good stuff, is really kind of feel it at a much kind of deeper level, becomes much more powerful, much more potent, and much more sort of sustainable. It's something, that stays with us for that much longer. So they may be small, these little kind of positive bits, but make them powerful. That's the kind of message, I think. Grab hold of the little bits and magnify them, and use all the senses to make the most of them, and they can override an awful lot. So just a few thoughts, folks, on kind of the negative and the positive. My kind of final message is beware of the kind of the brigade that are just out there going, think positive all the time. Is a positive affirmation and positive self-talk and positive visualization is all going to work. I'm not saying it doesn't, but I'm saying there's also another side to it, and it can be dangerous where it just becomes a kind of whole belief system, and all of a sudden it doesn't work and we're left kind of stranded. So a kind of more pragmatic, practical view, perhaps, is recognise the negative kind of side and kind of look at what you can do about that. Bring in all the other kind of types of thinking, and then work on the positive stuff and use some of these kind of little tips and techniques. And as I say, if you do nothing, nothing will happen. So go away, go smile a bit more tonight at various people. Go and write some happy thoughts down. Go and savor some stuff, but particularly kind of work on the reframing. Perhaps maybe that is a good place to start. Otherwise, folks, thank you very much for your time. Conscious I've kind of probably gone over there and thereabouts. I always say 45 minutes, it's always around about an hour. Very happy to answer any questions, but very happy, absolutely, Simon. It is beer o'clock, and that is positive thinking. Well, it would be if I drank. But yes, go and have a good evening, folks. Whatever you do, go and enjoy it. Go and enjoy your weekend if you are going to have one. And that's not to say you can't enjoy work if you're going to work tomorrow. Go and have a lovely time at work if that's where you're going. Otherwise, stay safe, and I hope to catch up with you. We're doing some more webinars, I think, coming up in the near future. So keep an eye out. I'm sure Helen will give you information on those ones. So hopefully to see you again. Got any questions? Happy to ask. Otherwise, have a good weekend, folks. Take care. Thank you. And apologies for the glitch in the middle. Nicole, I hear you. Yes, I hear you. Yeah, and I can see why you something that you've probably enjoyed and is so important. And if that's not happening, but I understand, number one, that's kind of okay to feel like that. There's no surprises. I wouldn't fight that particularly. But then it is about kind of going, okay, what am I now going to do about that? And that is about then taking the opportunities, perhaps, that you do have to work from home to cement existing relationships and create new ones and new ways of staying in touch with those that you did know. So, just because you're not going to spend time in the office doesn't mean that you're not going to spend time with these people anymore. So I think it's about how do we stay in touch? How do we kind of make sure that you know, if it is the people that is important, how do I kind of keep in contact and you know, keep moving forward with them? The environment is you know, is a difficult one, isn't it? You know, it's that physical environment. I think what happens is without trying to kind of second guess this and kind of spend too long on just kind of guessing stuff out there, it's exacerbated because of course we're locked in to a large degree. You know, as soon as we're able to kind of get out a bit more, then you can, you know, by going out and socializing, then that starts to change things, whether you're socializing with these people, but you create an environment to a certain degree that you had at the office that you don't have now. Ultimately, dare I say, there's always choice, isn't there? There's always finding organizations where there is an office environment, where there is space, but that's a dangerous one to go down for me right now. But I guess it's about kind of working out what options and choices are, and that's the game, isn't it? To kind of go, okay, what is it? The way I always kind of see it is, what is it that really is affecting me? What is it that I really don't like? Is it that I'm going to miss the people that I'm not with? Is it just that I'm going to miss being somewhere different and out of my house? What exactly is the issue? What exactly is the negative bit? And then how do I begin to change that? And that's just about looking at options. They might not be ideal options. They might not be preferred options, but at least they're options. And then bit by bit, you start to find options that either are you know, necessary or actually become preferred. I don't know whether that helps, but there's some thoughts out there. But I get it. And it's not uncommon. And people do change their minds, by the way. So the office may well go back again. Yeah, I get that. I hear you. Reframing some of the language, I absolutely get that, and I talk about that quite a lot, and I use it because it's common language, I guess. But I think it's people like me that perpetuate that to a certain degree. So I'm aware of that. So I too take your point on kind of using the language around black in particular that comes up. So I think it's a well-made point that black is bad, and we can kind of change that on all kinds of levels. So yeah, good point. Thank you. Any other question, guys, or any other thoughts? Anyone kind of chuck any more in? Otherwise, thank you again for your time. Taking it off. Thank you. Anyone else there that's got any? Are you wiping people out, Helen?
Yeah.